Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Charlene. Hi, Mia. Hi, Lucy Collected. Hope you're all doing great. So, our guest today is Tim from Magnetic Builder of Worlds. Sorry. I can speak, I promise. So, Tim is a crafter, educator, cultivator of magnificent facial hair, and also a great YouTuber. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm good, thanks. You left out pirate, by the way. Yes.
Ooh, pirate. Okay.
Also a pirate. Yes. I'm great. It's nice to be here. Exactly. Yeah, it's just one of the things I do. You know, hobby and building things gets in the way of grown-up things like pirating. Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
mean, it's a noble enterprise.
yeah, well, you know, it's that thing where you're always waiting for the real job that you really want to do come along. It took me about 50 years. Here I am. So I now get paid to blow up things and have sword fights. It's not bad.
You will have to tell us more about that later, but how about you start by telling us how you got into gaming and crafting?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Right. Well, I'm getting on a bit now. I started my tabletop gaming. I really suppose started well in the 1980s. As a kid, I always played with Airfix and Matchbox Soldiers, especially with a couple of friends of mine who lived just across the street to me. And but when we got to secondary school age, so when we were 11 or so, my friend Chris moved away, and I then moved as well. And that was 1982. Yeah, I think I caught up with him about in the summer of 1984, and he came to visit me in my new house, and he brought with him this little box of what turned out to be Games Workshop dwarves, really early dwarves, like second edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle dwarves. And I've got an older brother who, for some reason, at the same time, had been playing D&D. My brother is totally not the kind of guy you would ever expect to play Dungeons and Dragons at all. I think in the early 80s, it was kind of like a thing he dabbled in. And he also brought home this little collection of probably a dozen Citadel miniatures and stuff from other people, probably Grenadier or Ralpatha. But I really remember one of the Dark Elf Cold One Riders from Warhammer Fantasy Battle 2. And I was totally hooked straight away. That was kind of, I was used to Desert Rats and Africa Core or kind of like, you know, 1/72nd scale American paratroopers and things. And all of a sudden, I kind of found this kind of world of orcs and dwarves and elves and that kind of thing. Even before I'd read any Tolkien, really, I suppose. So I think the other thing that really got me into it was the Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone fighting fantasy books.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah.
So, you know, I right from the get-go, I played Warlock Firetop Mountain, and the first one I completed was Death Trap Dungeon, I think, which was number 6. And I kind of got the kind of bug for it right then when I was about 12 or 13, and it's kind of like stuck with me ever since. So I played Warhammer Fantasy Battle 2. Got a copy of that over here on the show.
Okay.
And then Fantasy Battle 3 with my mates from school. We were kind of like mid to late teenagers by then, and it was this huge, great, big, hefty tome. Fantasy Battle 3 felt like a proper war game, and that was the time when I was mostly happy to play with a grey and silver army. You know, we were so into getting the figures, but painting them didn't enter into it. I was a kind of busy guy, so playing the games was really important, and having painted figures wasn't quite so important. But I was one of the competition winners in White Dwarf in 1987 when 40k came out, when Rogue Trader came out, and I won a copy of Rogue Trader and got the box set of Marines and the box set of Orcs, and it was kind of cool. But over all these years, I've never really got the 40k vibe in the way. I'm a dwarves and dragons kind of guy rather than tanks and bolt guns. Although, yeah, later on Necromunda happened, and that was like so we played a bit of 40k. I was very lucky that I met my wife Heidi, who, if people who watch my channel, I don't know, might have seen her. Certainly would have heard me banging on about her. We met in 1988. We'll be together 36 years this summer. And we met through scouting, but we were heavy metal fans, and we role played, and she became a tabletop gamer as well. Me and my best friend Matt were both lucky to get girlfriends who I think they probably had this kind of moment where they kind of like were in the pub with us, or we'd probably gone to the loo or something else. And I think they made a conscious decision at some point. Either we kind of like work out, get into what these bozos are playing, or we're gonna have to dump them. So um, fortunately for me, she kind of stuck it out. So she got into tabletop gaming and role playing, that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, and throughout the late 80s and 90s, I played pretty much exclusively workshop games, mostly Fantasy Battle. Played 40k, but didn't really do an enormous amount for me. Throughout my time at university in the early 90s, we used to have once a year. I was ran social events for my college student union, and once a year I would wangle the use of the student union bar for me to get my mates from all over the country to come for a 24-hour war game, and we'd kind of like union. But I know, actually, thinking back about them, they were terrible. They must have looked just rubbish compared to games nowadays, and it was, yeah, Fantasy about 3, which just was tedious and went on, and you never got a satisfactory game, but it was a nice excuse to get my mates around and come down to the south coast and play Warhammer.
Yeah, I mean, I never played third edition, but I read through the rule book, and it's a bit of a brick, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a completely different game. When I wrote fourth edition, it was a complete shift
Hmm.
from a traditional war game, because that's where Rick Priestley and Nigel Stillman and Jervis Johnson's background was traditional war gaming in many ways. And they moved to this much faster, more slick, better game in many ways. And that kind of like changed a lot of things, and that's when they really started to develop and pick apart, create a much clearer idea of what the Warhammer world looked like. I was totally into that. We played, me and myself, Matt, and his girlfriend and my girlfriend at the time, and a couple of other people got really into Warhammer Fantasy role play as well. So we did a lot of role playing, and yeah, it was just, I jollied along. In 1996, 97, I worked for Workshop
Great,
for a
great.
year as I just worked in the retail stores in southern part of Essex. Made some really good friends, and it was a really cool experience. And that was when Necromunda came out. And Necromunda was the absolute game changer for my wargaming experience, because that's where I kind of fell in love with skirmish style games and narrative campaigns, and being able to play a game in an evening and getting a conclusion and then follow it on, so yeah, that was kind of cool experience. But it was, and I always used to say in the old days that was the best job I'd ever had up till whenever. But that's because I only knew I was going to work for them for a limited amount of time, because I was filling time between um, leaving university and doing my postgrad, so I could go on and become. I never meant to become a teacher, but I became a teacher. And when I left Workshop, my regional manager said, I'm sure you'll end up running a school club. And this is in the days when I didn't really do school clubs, and I was like, no, I'm going to primary teaching. The kids won't be old enough. And lo and behold, within about a year, I was playing 40k with kids in school.
So how did that
Uh,
happen?
well, yeah, I just couldn't help myself. I'm an English teacher, and I'd started using um, Warhammer and Warhammer Quest, especially, to play games with kids and then get them to write a story, give them a structure and a thing that's happened. So I worked really closely with some guys, because who I knew, who had previously worked in retail, but then were working in a community in the section of Workshop, and they gave me free toys. They supported me in my endeavours in school. And then that span into playing 40k, and I wrote a thing called 40k in 40 minutes, which was published in White Dwarf. In the club section, there used to be a club section in White Dwarf, and Andy Chambers said, "Oh yeah, that's quite a nice hobby article. Well done, you," kind of thing. When I met him, talked to him about it, and actually it became huge. It was ended up in edition 4 of 40k. So I've got writing credits in in edition 4 40k, and that became Combat Patrol, which is also my name. So if anybody plays 40k and Combat Patrol, and that's all my fault. And it's purely because I wanted a game that my kids could play in a school lunchtime. So it was all about heavily restricting army lists and being able to specifically choose little patrols, getting into a kind of the idea was it was like an Imperial Guard army. That's what they're called now. What they're called now, Astral Militant, whatever. The idea was it was like, you know, you had a chimera and a squad of 10 regular troops and maybe a little command section with a lieutenant, and that was a patrol, you know. Or I had one of my patrols for that was the Space Wolves patrol, which was literally a Razorback and 6 Marines, and that's to me what, you know. But you got quite a good fun game of 40k out of it. You could certainly learn the principles of it, and it became enormous. It was played all over the world, and they were running tournaments with it, and it was kind of, yeah, something else that I made nothing out of it, but I did get a free copy of the rules. So. And at the same time, we'd written a thing called Warhammer Ahoy as well, which was a ship-based thing for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, myself and my mate Matt, and that was, again, that took off.
That one I definitely need to look that one up, because
oh yeah,
like I'm not really into 40k, but fantasy anything, sign me up.
Ships. And I grew up, when I was a kid, I grew up sailing. My family are sailors, and I sailed on you know, the rivers of the East Coast and out into the North Sea, and I've got this thing about ships, and that's what I like. I'm a pirate now, I suppose. So, and writing ship rules was really complicated. I was when Workshop had Warhammer Historical in the early 2000s as well. They wrote, and they'd already done Legends of the Old West, which was, of course, based on the massively successful what's now Middle Earth strategy battle game. You know, it uses the same rule set. And then they got into writing. They launched into Legends of the High Seas. He says, leaning over his shoulder and pulling it off the shelf. Look at that. So
that does look like to be a magnificent library.
This mighty tome was being written by this guy called Tim Kalinske, who had blagged his way into writing it, as far as I could tell. He's American, very nice chap. Lives in Arizona, which is
famous for its seafaring ways. Yeah,
exactly right. And he was writing his version of you know, using the Legends rules that are out there already. And I was contacted by a mate of mine who still worked for Workshop and was involved by that point in Warhammer Historical, going, you know, you wrote those ship rules for Warhammer. Yeah. Would you like to be involved with this? Because we're writing a pirate. We've got this pirate game that's being written. And at the time, there were no rules for ships. You know, there was no intention of actually having ship-to-ship action in Legends of the High Seas. And I was like, what?
How does that work? Legends of the High Seas, no ship actions.
Exactly. Yeah, it was all ashore. It was all the kind of, so, you know, if you picture Pirates of the Caribbean, when the crew of the Black Pearl come into Port Royal to start off with, there's a lot of that kind of stuff, but no ship-to-ship action, which was just really weird. I was like, well, and Matt and I were very much of the opinion that you couldn't. That would be like writing a game called Circus Maximus and having no rules for chariots, or, you know, right? We'll write a game called The Red Baron, but we won't put any rules in for aircraft. Yeah. So I was kind of I wrote the ship rules and bits and pieces for that as well. So I've kind of like, you know, I've been around. I've got a few kind of like cool little things under my belt, but, you know, then teaching happened and that soaked up loads of my time, and then kids happened and that soaks up a lot of your time. And then I discovered reenactment, and I've been a historical reenactor and interpreter for nearly 20 years now, and that kind of like takes up a lot of my time. And
do you have any specific period, or do you spread across?
I started off as a tutor. I started off at a place called Kentwell Hall in Suffolk. We sold our house in 2005 to some tutors, basically. At that point, I had my kids were my son and daughter were 3 and 1, We had to move to get the kids into the school we wanted to get them into, which was the school that Heidi and I both taught at, but we live quite away from it. And the only way you can do that here is you have to live in what's called catchment. You've got to live in the area the school's in, even if you teach there. So we had to
Okay.
move to our current house, which is round the corner from Heidi's parents' place. And when we sold our house, with the people who bought it eventually, when they came to view it, I was sent out with the kids. Take the kids out, get them out of the house.
Okay.
And Heidi showed this couple around our house, and I came back and I said, "How'd it go?" She said, "I think it's really good because these people turned out to be like a slightly younger version of us." And yeah, so we sold our house to Tudor reenactors who had two girls who were at that point 2 and 0. So our kids then were 3, 2, 1 and 0. And now 20 something years later, they're now 22, 21, 20 and 19, which is kind of cool. But yeah, they bought a house from us and we went with them. That was just before Christmas in 2005. And went into January the following year, which is a bit weird going back to a house you used to live in and now somebody else lives in it. But we went back for their younger daughter's birthday because they were new to the area and they didn't know many people. And we met a load of other people there, their friends, who were also Tudor reenactors. And by the end of the afternoon, they'd kind of like planted a seed, enough thoughts there. And we drove away with our kids in the back of the car, fast asleep. And we're like, well, we'd always talked about something we like to do as a family. It's very much about, for us, reenactment was about a family thing. And this sounds like a real kind of, family thing. These new friends of ours, they've got 2 little girls and they all go as a family. So, yeah, so we got into like that. And that kind of, I got that bug then. And then we got into 15th century reenactment. So I was the Duke of Suffolk, the brother-in-law of Richard III and Edward IV. And I've led the Yorkist armies out at the battles of Bosworth. But I also found pirates and various other things. And then we kind of like mixed school things happened, and I kind of like left school because I started when in school I was able to use all this hobby for school stuff, along with reenactment, which I was using for school stuff. I started using models. I was starting to make big scale models and using Papo and Schleich toys, which are like 5-inch 12 centimeter tall figures, to get kids to start telling stories. So they were telling stories and using these models, and I was doing all these kind of wacky things. I was getting kids to pretend to be secret agents so we could write secret agent stories, and we had pirate days to write pirate stuff. And I kept getting shipped off to other schools to go and do this in other schools. And then I thought, well, this is
Excuse me.
cool. And I started working for myself. So I now go all over the country and give kids stories to write, and I managed to blend that in with using my models and all sorts of other bits and pieces. Pretty neat.
Yeah, I put up the picture of the hall that you had. We had talked
Yeah,
about
that's
previously.
yeah, that's a really cool one. I love that model. That is um 90 centimeters on a base. That's the house itself is on a 90 centimeter by 60 centimeter base. So it's a big Victorian mansion that comes apart in 10 pieces, and all those lights around the outside. I'm pointing at it. You can't see I'm pointing at it, but there you go. All the lights around the outside there, they all light up.
Ooh.
They've got concealed battery packs and bits and pieces. I made that in about 2006. That building for a big game we did at Salute, where we won best scenery. Where we used to have a Victoriana game called End of Empire, which is a kind of role play tabletop crossover. And that building was made for that, which is kind of cool. And it's fully detailed inside. I can furnish every room now, and there are paintings on the walls. There's a Botticelli on the ballroom wall and all sorts of things. It's ridiculous. And I made it, and we used it for a couple of shows, and then it sat around for a long time. And then I kind of cottoned on to the fact that I could use that in my work. So the kids now, that's the home of the bad guy who looks suspiciously like Telly Savalas. Kids, where we go to school and we can't take the kids out to a big house to go and spy on it. So we have the kids spying a house, and I have all these 11-year-olds crawling around the school hall with binoculars, staring at this model, counting up security guards and guard dogs, and the helicopter on the roof, and all kind of other weirdness. But it means you get great stories and great bits of writing out of it. So it's
Yeah, I
so
mean,
yeah,
I remember one of the videos you did on Time Capsule TV, I think, and it was, sorry, I keep forgetting the name. It's the village you have on the lake or the marsh.
Benfleet, yeah,
Yeah, and I
but
mean,
the
you,
marsh, village in the marsh, yeah.
yeah, and you were talking about how to use that to come up with stories and ideas, and yeah, I mean, like,
So
everyone could use this. This is good for everyone.
it's cool, yeah. I mean, the thing is, in the end, is that all of my gaming, especially probably in the last 10 years or so, has been come about collective storytelling experience. So I love role-playing games, but I love the tactile, appeal of a tabletop game, and I love making the scenery side of things. Has been the thing I really got into. My gaming friend Matt and I, when Mordheim came out, Necromunda was cool. When Mordheim came out, we
Oh
started
yeah,
building all kinds of stuff like
yeah.
that. And I love really good Mordheim tables. Now, I'd love to build a Mordheim table, but I haven't got the figures, and none of my current friends play, and I wouldn't have anywhere to put it. I am really running out of space for terrain, but yeah, Mordheim is one of those ones that just I absolutely dig it. It's an amazing look. Um, and so I kind of like have got this bug for these storytelling kind of games, that my absolute idea of hell is a tournament.
Oh yeah, I
There's
totally get you.
no way. I admire people who go to tournaments, and I know a lot of people have a lot of fun, and well done them, basically, because I just couldn't do it. I don't like that mentality. I don't like power gaming. Um, I don't like that need to sit down and find the ultimate combo to do a thing, to make a
Yeah,
thing happen.
I mean, totally with you. Just not a fan of stressing over a game. I just like, if I'm playing a game, I like to have fun and sit down and have a beer with
Yeah.
friends, have a laugh. Not no, I
Oh
got to win. I
God,
got
yeah.
to win.
The most important thing to me now is you have a joint experience where you get to the end of it, and you both walk away from it going, that was cool. Yeah, that was great fun. I'm really pleased to play that, and you can have a laugh about what's happened. Now, I'm sure you can get those circumstances in tournaments, but I also talk to an awful lot of people where it is a very stressy kind of experience, and just not my bag at all. I've avoided clubs for many years now. Again, people who know me and have seen what I do, they know that I've got a group of people I play with, but I'm a bit of a benign dictator, really, when it comes to if any of you are watching it, fellas, um, they're all really happy to play on my terrain, and I kind of persuaded a couple of friends to get into playing bits and pieces, especially when I discover Burrows and Badgers. Burrows and Badgers is um, just the absolute best tabletop game that I've ever played, frankly.
People keep recommending it to me, and I still need to take a look at it because it does look like a lot
Yeah,
of fun. But in
it,
the
it, it's it's everything that I like in a war game. The miniature range is charming. First of all, every single figure, and I have every single figure,
whoa,
which
okay,
I've never done. I've got every figure in the range, which I've never done for any other game. And up until the last Kickstarter that came out, I had everything painted as well. It's the most complete set of
whoa,
painted
okay.
figures I ever had. I'm a bit behind at the moment. I've got a bunch of stuff on the workbench right in front of me at the minute, which is got like new beaver, which is rather lovely. And then there's kind of and then there's what else is going on here? So a pretty little raven with. So it's this anthropomorphic tabletop game that's terribly not in focus. Hey, look at that. So the figures are great. The rule system is really elegant, and there is another edition coming out next year, which I'm very excited to see.
Ooh, okay.
Um,
I'll probably wait for that
and
and jump on it.
yeah, that's due to be released at Salute. By the way, people, if you're a B&B fan, chatting with Michael Lovejoy, the writer, the other night. Um, so the miniatures are great. The rule set is one set of rules, one rule book, none of which are on the shelf because they're obviously. Here it is. Look at that. So it's one set of rules. That's it. Currently, the buy-in to get into this game is ridiculously low. You can buy a set of rules, about £20, and then really, if you spend 60 or 70 quid, you can get 2 war bands, and you could be up and playing. It's so for less than £100, I think you can get 2 people playing this game, which in nowadays
Nowadays terms, yeah, that's
is
pretty good.
great value. The other thing then that I really love about it is the fact that, talking of the really great figure range, is that there are factions in the game, in the rulebook, and in the new one there'll be a whole bunch of them, but the figures aren't tied to particular factions. So when you pick a warband, which is usually a starting warband, is only going to be 4 to 7 figures. It's very unusual to get more than about 6 in a starting warband. You normally do it by going rule of cool, and you just pick the figures you like, and any figure will go with any figure. So unlike a lot of other traditional games where you're looking at particular factions and only those models can use those rules, it means that then you can just buy the toys you like, and I really like that. I think it's a great philosophy.
Oh, yeah.
And then it leads into really cool narrative kind of games. That Michael Lovejoy, the writer, has produced a couple of really great campaign packs, different styles of campaign, which I've taken and adapted, and it's huge. It's an enormous sandbox as well. There's loads of opportunity to go off and do your kind of thing with it. I mean, the rules are easy to pick up, so it's a great game. And Benfliot came out of that. I was started doing that during the pandemic, and I had a load of time on my hands because all my work died. And I was at home, and I'm gonna have to make wargaming figures and terrain. And then I started getting into photography and videoing, and then it's lovely. Just looking at those pictures there, it's really cool. I could just make stuff for B&B, but every now and then I kind of fall by the wayside and have to do something else. So at the moment, Just Dread is the thing that I'm into.
Yeah, in fact,
Uh,
Loosely Collected has said that he's been excited to see your Judge Dredd stuff because he bought the Warlord game and nobody seems to be doing anything except you.
yeah. It is one of those things. I mean, Dread is it's one of those games that Boroughs and Badgers I've really enjoyed. I've been playing B&B for what? Well, it's 2024 now. I think I discovered it in about 2018, 2019. I've had 5 or 6 really good years out of playing Boroughs and Badgers. I've played some of the best campaigns I've ever had. I've ever been able to play with it, with the group of guys I've got, which is my curated wargaming group. Kind of invitation only. A lot of them. Actually, it's a really lovely group because it's basically there's 8 of us who play. There's myself and a young chap who's kind of like an adopted son of ours, ex-pupil of mine. And then the other 3, there are then 3 other dads and their 3 sons. So it's like dads and lads as a club, which is really nice. And they've come out, they've been very gracious and come to salute a couple of times and worn my t-shirts and run my game for me while I've stood and talked to people, which is pretty cool. But I've always erred to playing skirmish games rather than big battalion type stuff, and I've dabbled in all kinds of things over the years, pirates and Wild West and all of that kind of thing. And I always get to the point of thinking, I'm not sure how much longevity is in this. When you play Wild West games, after you've done the bank robbery and you've had a shootout in the saloon and you've had a shootout in the in the street outside the saloon, and you've rescued the guy who's going to be lynched. There's a bit of me like, if there's a stagecoach, you could hold it up. And so I played the kind of tropey kind of scenarios, and I've got to the point of going, I've kind of run out of ideas really now for that. And the same way for pirates, actually, funny enough. Whereas B&B, I've kind of like we've just written loads of stuff for it. And Judge Dredd, I always thought was good. Might be that kind of game but there's so much source material for Dredd.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But the thing to me about Dredd is the fact that in many ways it lends itself much better to a role-playing game than it does to a tabletop game. because the nature of judges is they're solo, they're solitary. You might have, you know, 1-2 judges together maybe, but
It's
you
not a
know,
unit thing.
it's not a unit kind of thing. But actually, I think the Warlord system is again a really elegant system. I like the counter system they use for pulling priority and various other bits and pieces. So that's pretty cool. And I've just been able to launch into um, making Dread my way. I love both the films to a certain extent. I love the 2012 Karl Urban film, but it doesn't look dready enough for me. It doesn't. Mega City 1 is not developed enough. I like the Stallone film. I remember it coming out in about, wow, it must be about 1995. And Heidi and I went and watched that twice on the same weekend. Once to go, we used to go to the cinema before. This is before we had kids, of course. We used to go to the cinema on a Friday night for what we call Friday night films. We were both teachers, and it was a case of winding down, sitting there and eating popcorn and watching a kind of like movie you didn't care about and have to think about. You know, it's a Friday night movie. So we went and watched Judge Dredd the first time for Friday night movie, and then we went on Saturday night and went and picked it apart as Dredd nerds and complained about everything. But the look of Mega City 1 in the Stallone film is pretty good. And I want to try and capture that with my Dredd scenery. I want, you know, so it's because too much of it I see Judge Dredd stuff is played in the wastelands or played on the city bottom, and I always think it's a bit of a cop out. I've become a bit of a scenery snob. I'm awful with. There are times when I'm kind of critical. I'm so into the aesthetic of the game now, and into the scenery side of things. Yeah, you can't turn up to play Burrows and Badgers unless your figures are painted. Just ain't gonna happen. One of the young lads in there, Alex, is constantly being given grief because his figures aren't based, and it's like. And I'm the same with most systems. There are some systems I've kind of bought stuff for and then never really played because it's got to be done right or not at all. So I bought Frostgrave when Frostgrave came out, and I never really got into it because it's got wizards, and I'm not a big wizards kind of guy. Considering I love fantasy games, I've never been into wizards. And the same with Star Wars. I'm a massive Star Wars fan. Don't really like Jedi. You know, I'm a Han Solo villainous scum kind of bloke, really, rather than a Jedi kind of wizardy kind of thing. Wizards
Nah,
always seem a cop out.
but it's funny you should mention that because that's the same reason why I prefer Mordheim and Rangers of Shadowdeep to Frostgrave.
Yeah, exactly. Frostgrave is all about wizards and but the other thing with Frostgrave to me was the fact of going, oh, if I play Frostgrave, I'm gonna have to build an enormous snowy city, you know. And there were lots of people when they came out going, I'm going to use my Mordheim terrain and this, that, and the other. And by the time they're using their Mordheim terrain, and a lot of them were using Mordheim figures as proxies, there's a bit of me that's just like, well, just bloody play Mordheim. You know, it looks like Mordheim, smells like Mordheim, play Mordheim. So yeah, I never really got into Frostgrave, and there have been a couple of other systems like that I bought and then kind of put to one side because I wanted to, you know, be something. That's what I did with Burrows and Badgers, was that actually that my buildings that I've made for B&B, I went out of my way when I started with Burrows and Badgers figures. I was absolutely determined to not just make Mordheim for bunnies. You know, I wanted the buildings to look different. So I've got a lot of my urban buildings have got these kind of like convex high gable roofs and low walls, and they're because it looked completely different to everything I made fantasy wise before, and that's what I loved about the marsh scenery. Again, it looks completely different to anything
Oh
else I've
yes,
done. And,
very unique.
it's so yeah, I want it to look really different. Every game I play, I've got so those kind of things. The house there in the top right hand corner, the red house, as it's known, is if I had to make Rat's house from The Wind in the Willows, I think that's probably how it can. That's certainly what I had in mind. Whenever I build a piece of scenery, well, 9 times out of 10, I develop a narrative as I'm going along. So it's not just a thing, you know, it's like, well, who lives here and what's the characters about and all that kind of thing.
Okay,
So, you
here's a
know, it's,
different board for comparison.
yeah, this is my 40mm pirate setup. Because the other weird thing I did a few years ago was get into 40mm games, skirmish stuff.
So
Because
wait,
I'm
well,
getting
this must be huge.
that's actually the board that's on. Let's have a look. That's 1, 2, 3. That's only about no. What's that? That's 4.5 feet wide. That's my modular table. So that's in 45 centimeter squares, 18-inch squares, or 90 centimeter, 3 foot by 1.5 foot kind of square. So it's a decent kind of size. So yeah, I go into 40mm, and I love 40mm figures, and it's a bit nerdy and a bit niche because there aren't many of them out there. So a part of the fun is hunting down those figures. But the problem, of course, with 40mm is it's bigger, which makes storing it a pain.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So yeah, it's a really useful crates of my friends. So over here, there are actually those are just mostly CAC
That's it.
boxes. A few crafted boxes in my wife's. Over here, right in the middle, that is an indulgent box of tabletop world scenery that I bought last year. Because I
Oh,
came into money from my inheritance from my mum, and part of that, I thought, we did lots of sensible things with money that I inherited from my mum. But there was a bit of it I reserved to go, right. I've looked at tabletop world miniatures models for years, and I've always I've bought a load. It's great, and now they're just sat in a box over there. I've done fuck all with.
so
um, the questable terrain, the roof thatch. If you go, can we go back to a Benfield picture?
of course. 1 second.
Okay, so my standard. Where are we? Where are we?
There we go.
That would do. So yeah, the thatch on all of those is made from teddy bear fur. So it's you basically cut large panels of teddy bear fur, which you can buy it, you know, on the roll, and then lay it on either side of the roof, and then it gets coated in Mod Podge, a lot of Mod Podge, because otherwise you can't paint it. And then that way there you can smooth it down and give it shape, and then put a ridge bit across the top. And it makes pretty effective thatch. It's very, very scruffy thatch. If you ever get up to proper thatch buildings, thatching buildings is an absolute art form, and it's super neat and regular. And my thatch buildings are not, but it is a pretty cool effect. It works really, really well. It certainly gives that impression of thatch buildings, although it is worth pointing out that architecturally speaking, those buildings are bloody rubbish. Thatch,
How's that?
I mean, because thatch works. If you look at most thatch buildings,
Mm-hmm.
the pitch of the roof is really high because thatch
Oh,
works by having the water run off, and so you need a high pitch roof on the whole for thatch to work really, really well. And most of those buildings, the pitch of the roof is really quite low,
too low. So
so
okay, you don't get
the
enough.
water won't run away
All right.
fast enough. It's the same with in countries where you get a lot of snow in the wintertime.
You have to have the
Traditionally,
yeah.
the pitch of the roofs is really high to shed the snow. And those, yeah. So the well, you say I didn't kill any teddy bears over that. The very first time, we might have cut up the old teddy bear,
Oh
maybe.
no.
But yeah, no, it's a lot easier to go out and buy it in rectangular pieces than it is
Yeah,
to
I can imagine.
gut a teddy bear. Although I think the first teddy bear we used, we did use all the wadding for another bit of terrain as well for flames and things, so or smoke. So, but we always have an excess of teddy bears in this house. It's fine. Excellent stuff. Yeah. So yeah, the tabletop world things. are gorgeous. It's kind of like feels like cheating, but they're beautiful models. They're just the absolute pinnacle of kind of like resin models. I haven't found anybody. I know STLs are better than them. They're just amazing. I've got a bunch of figures for Moonstone now. I bought some Moonstone figures, um, and frivolously got a mate of mine to paint them for me, because there's not enough time in the day, and he's an
For
awesome
sure.
painter. And I think if I get around to doing that, I'm going to use Tabletop World buildings to play Moonstone with again, so my games look kind of different to each other. I've got over here, hang on, the other problem with Tabletop World games is with buildings is they're too small.
Are they? All right.
They're kind of true 25. They're 25 to 28 millimeter, and of course most stuff now is bigger than that. But in this box here, and in this box here are the new Tabletop World cottages from their recent Kickstarter, and they're a
Okay.
bigger scale, and they're extraordinary. I might actually have to do an unboxing of them at some point from my channel just for fun, because they're in. Although I've unboxed them already, but I've put them back in the boxes so I could do an unboxing. But they're now in multiple parts. I mean, this is the model I fell in love with, which I'm gonna have to do something with. This is the discontinued fisherman's cottage,
Oh, pretty.
which is an extraordinary model. There's so much detail in it. It's just ridiculous. But it's actually really quite small. It will work for Middle Earth because they're kind of like proper 25 mil anyway. Um, so yeah, these could be used for Middle Earth. I've got a stack of Middle Earth figures, and a cupboard. My every gamer of course has got a pile of shame, haven't we? Yeah, we've got a grey pile of shame. Some are bigger than others. My grey pile of shame. It does involve a lot of Carnivali figures, so that's going to be another project. And there's a lot of Middle Earth stuff. And one of the things about Middle Earth is the fact that I during the pandemic I bought a load. I've gone through cycles of gaming. I'm sure there are other people watching who've done exactly the same thing, where they've bought a game. I don't know. They might not have done. You tell me. Have you done this, right? Folks watching.
Yeah,
Um,
shoot.
Bought into a game to start off with. You collected it. You played with it. It was pretty cool. But then you moved on to the next thing. And then because of either lack of funds or lack of space or just, you sold it all off. And then a year or two later, you went, oh, bloody hell, I wish I hadn't sold all that off. And then you bought a whole load of new stuff. And you're kind of like back to square one, because that's what I did with Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
Uh,
ouch.
so when Lord of the Rings came out, obviously in the early 2000s, so let's have a think. Lord of the Rings strategy battle game, Fellowship of the Ring, came out in 2001. Because I remember that the movie came out Christmas 2001, because my wife was pregnant with my son when we went to see Fellowship of the Ring. She was 8 months pregnant with Nathan when we went and saw Fellowship of the Ring. There are a couple of important things about that. It first of all shows how much, even at that point, Heidi loves me, because she does not like Tolkien at all. So going to see the Lord of the Rings films, she came to see all three, was just an act of love, and go to the cinema with me, not because she was dying to see the movies. And it was a very interesting experience. That first of all, Nathan really didn't like the music and the atmosphere of the Black Riders in the Prancing Pony in Bree. He was 8 months. He was in utero, and he went absolutely bonkers, kicking and punching all the
Okay.
inside of his when the Black Riders coming to stab the hobbits. And then both times, yeah, he kind of like leant on her bladder as the Fellowship of the Ring were going over Carhadras. And she had to go to the loo both times, going through the snow over the mountains. So yeah, I know exactly when the game came out. So I got into Lord of the Rings then, and we played it in school, and that was when I was going, and it's cool. And then years later, I decided that I wasn't going to play Lord of the Rings anymore, and I'd sell it all off. So I did. And then during the pandemic, I thought I've got loads of hands on my time on my hands, and and I really, and I bought a load of middle earth stuff, including like 6 Rohan houses and half a dozen Lake Town houses. They're all in a cupboard just over here. It's my cupboard of shame. That's the cupboard of shame. You can't see it back there. I can't point your webcam around.
It's cleverly
Back
concealed.
doors,
Okay.
back doors just here, right? This is the cupboard of shame. And in there are an awful lot of Rohan houses I've got to do something with. Don't know what I'm going to do. But I have a desire. It's on my list of things to do. Is make Lake Town for Middle Earth.
Oh, nice.
I'd say that. I don't think it's going to happen because I am going where I put it. My biggest problem now is that I have a garage. I'm in my workshop, an office. And I had this was made at the beginning of this year. It's cool because I've now got a purpose-built space. It's not big enough, of course, but but in the garage on the other side of the wall to my left are all my really useful crates full of terrain. Now my Necromunda Underhive project is enormous. People who watch my channel will know that. At some point I've got to get all that out and put that out together because that's just epic. And then my Wild West 40mm Wild West town takes up a lot of space. I've got more Burrows and Badgers scenery than you can shake a stick at. There's stuff for Star Wars Legion, although I can't bring myself to play Star Wars Legion, but because too many fiddly bits. But I love making Star Wars stuff, so there's Star Wars stuff, and there's 40mm pirates, and there's a lot out there. I am running out of space. God knows where I'm going to put this Judge Dredd stuff. The latest thing, of course, I built for Judge Dredd. I'm going to try not to drop this now. Is this thing, which is my Zoom. This is the Zero, the color anti-mag zoom train thing on the track and all the rest of it, which is really cool. It's going to be a place part of the setup that I'm working on. The only thing is that I was not thinking about this when I made this particular bit, especially the track. All the train comes apart, but this is bigger than anything that fits in a really useful crate. So I don't know where that's going to go. It's about 90 centimeters long. But yeah, I like it. This is what, and the thing I'm enjoying about Dread is it's going to look completely different to everything else I do. So it's got no way to put it.
Sure. So in the meantime, Campaign Terrain is saying that his housemate heard the talk of Teddy Bear Fair and gave him about half a yard of some she was not using. Nice.
Look, I've done 2 things there. I've helped her clear out her fabric stash. And I know people who have fabric stashes, my wife, for example. So I've done a good thing there. And then I've also, helped somebody else on with their hobby as well.
Okay, and Dirty Basement Terrain is saying, oh man, you'd have loved to be with me yesterday. I saw so much Lord of the Rings stuff in a flea market being sold at rock bottom prices.
You're right. I'm always dead jealous. And there are people, there are people who go to flea markets or charity stores in the UK, and they have much better charity stores. Charity stores around where I live are just full of old granny's shoes. And nothing decent at all, handbags that smell a bit.
Yeah, same thing here. So let's see.
And a dragon's hoard of treasure. Now that's not necessarily the case, is it? What is important though, when it comes to your hobby things, is you've got to make sure that there's somebody who knows its actual true value in case you die, and your partner sells it for what you told her it's worth and not what it's actually worth. Important life lesson. Oh, excellent. Right, where next?
Where next? I think people were talking about your bookshelf earlier, and I think Dungeon Matron mentioned seeing the Wheel of Time on your bookshelf. Do you have any inspirations from any fantasy books or series when you're building your terrain, or is it just following the particular lore of the given game?
I think I've rarely tried to build. There are very few things I've built deliberately to go with anything that anybody else has built. I love, like I said, I love to build some Lake Town stuff. I love the Lord of the Rings films. I even quite like the Hobbit films. The world building in those movies is extraordinary, and I love to build the odd thing from that. I'm into what's interesting with my Magnathea Builder Worlds thing, and as a channel and as a name, was that it was just a bit kind of flippant when I kind of thought, I'll do that. I'm a bit of a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy nerd. There'll be other Hitchhiker's Guide fans who will kind of like get the reference, and that's kind of like why it got called what it did. But actually, the interesting thing about everything that I do now is you can actually sum it up as being a builder of worlds. So in my hobby, I'm all about building the worlds that the games take place in. In my job, where I, as a teacher and an education consultant, I'm all about building worlds for kids mainly to write stories in, to exist in and write stories in, fantasy stories or secret agent stories or science fiction stories. And in reenactment now, and other things, I'm into building immersive experiences and worlds. So it's more than just a bunch of blokes in funny clothes in the field. I want people to kind of like get deeper into what we're doing. So having an understanding of the whole kind of world that we're in. At the moment, my obsession is the golden age of piracy and the early 18th century, which is an amazing time to be a reenactor because you got tea, coffee, hot chocolate, and potatoes. And if I smoked, I could be puffing away on a pipe all day as well.
That's one thing I never thought about in about reenactors. It's like, yeah, if you're there, you cannot if you're doing 15th century or 14th century, you cannot have coffee.
No coffee, no tea.
Ah,
You know, Brits with no
ah,
tea. I'm not a big tea drinker, but the concept of not having access to tea during it's a really big deal. So everything I'm into is about building worlds, but I like to build my kind of worlds. I have built the odd thing. So in my Wild West town,
mhm.
in my 40mm Wild West town, I wonder if I can find a picture of it. Because you might not have it there. And then, oh fuck, then I'm gonna have to find out how to stick it up on the thing. Oh no, technology! This could be an absolute nightmare.
I think I've got a picture of your saloon. I think here.
Oh, okay, so my saloon there. So, if you go, I'll just try and find. So that's fine. I mean, my saloons are normally based on movies. And I love the one. I love the. Although I'm not a fan of Mel Gibson, probably my favorite Wild West film. Shit, no, it's just gone completely out of my head.
Maverick.
Maverick.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. And I've built the saloon from that before. That was in 28mm. But one of the things I really enjoyed building was we love going to Disneyland, my wife and I. Disneyland Paris mostly, although we're going to go and do a fortnight in Disney World in October, and I go and camp out in Galaxy's Edge. That's another story. But I built a set of buildings for my Wild West town based on 3 of the buildings in, or a run of buildings in Frontierland in Disneyland Paris. I took photographs. Obviously, couldn't take any measurements, but I sat down and made my versions of that thing,
Okay.
which is pretty cool. And so every now and then I make stuff like that. But I think I don't know whether it's the fact that I'm not confident enough to have a go at making real places, or whether I'm just too wrapped up in my own mind. I have too many ideas. I did make in 2009. I made a model of Kentwell Hall, which is the place where I started reenacting, for a 1588 tabletop game that we played at Salute. I used to have it. I wrote a set of rules called 1588 and all that. I'm into military history and what ifs. And my
Nice.
favorite what if is what if the Spanish Armada landed. And we used to have this campaign. I built Kentwell Hall, which is on a 6 foot by 3 foot board, and it's a model of the house. And it's cool model. I still got the actual.
Did you
Stored
publish these rules anywhere?
well, actually, most of them were based on the Middle Earth rules.
All right.
I bother writing my own. I have a website which is called which is can be found at www.spiritofthegame.org.uk. And it's ancient. I haven't done anything to it for some time. He says, so please don't go there and think it's going to be super current and up to date. It really isn't. And it was probably made with a crappy Microsoft HTML writer as well. So from that point of view, it's probably, most people probably disapprove of the whole thing now.
.co.uk, you said it's not coming up right now. It's showing it's like a park domain, but
hang on a minute. So he says.
So in the meantime, let's see.
Spiritofthegame.org.uk.
Ah, okay.
It's totally there. Which is Spirit of the Game was the name that I used to have, but the last news update on that says December 2017. So it is definitely not up to date.
It's still good. I mean, like, just because things aren't updated doesn't mean that that they're not good.
Oh yeah, no, and I mean the thing is on there, the game's on there on Spirit of the Game. You've got Blaze of Glory, which is my Wild West rules. If anybody actually would like a copy of my Wild West rules, there is a Blaze of Glory group on Facebook, and the rules are there. If not, I'll happily email them to people. There is the Victoriana game called End of Empire, which is the game that we wrote in the early 2000s, me and my mate Pete, who was the head teacher of the school I worked at the time. That was an award-winning game. We won Best in Show in 1 year and runner-up Best in Show at Salute 2 years on the trot, Best Scenery, and one at South East London War Games and that kind of thing. And then there's 1588 and all that, which is my 1588 England invaded kind of like game. So yeah, there are various bits and pieces on that. It's kind of the ancient history of Tim's game in there, which is
featured in War Games Illustrated. Nice.
Yeah, so it's been around a long time, and it's interesting. Every now and then I look at that and think, oh, I really must go back and do something with that. And there is not enough time in the day to go back and do that.
I can imagine.
I have, interestingly, here we go. I was just trying to find a. Let's have so. Stick that in downloads there.
So let's see. I see that James Fruit Hayden joined us. Good evening. And Questboard Train is asking, what is your favorite reenactment event or location?
Oh, okay. So, well, yeah. I mean, reenactment. That's a whole different kettle of fish. Favorite reenactment event. So, at the moment, definitely 18th century piracy. I wrote a thing. I've been involved doing stuff for English Heritage the last couple of years with pirates. I was approached to do a Golden Age of Piracy, an authentic Golden Age of Piracy event for English Heritage across a number of sites. The difficult thing about that is the fact that the Golden Age of Piracy happened 5,000 miles away to the west, right? And they wanted me to do these events in castles as opposed to on a ship. So I'm kind of like lost in that. In fact, what day is it? Sunday. This time next week, I will have hopefully I would have just finished an event at the old Royal Naval College in Greenwich. So the home of the Royal Navy, where we're doing an event there. The old Royal Naval College is the most filmed location in the UK.
Really?
I'm told it appears in more films than nearly anything, because it's just kind of really cool big Georgian buildings, and it's if people I have never watched Bridgerton, but the latest thing that it's been in is Bridgerton, but it's also in off the top of my head it was used in Thor Dark World. Was that what the film was called?
Yeah, that's the second movie.
Yeah, that's the one where the aliens land the things that look suspiciously like dark elves. And that's the Old Royal Naval College. It's in the start of Pirates of the Caribbean 4, where Johnny Depp meets George I. It's in all kinds of things. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. I've blagged my way into doing an event there next weekend, which is cool. So that's and then we're going to Carisbrooke Castle on the Isle of Wight, and then Dover Castle for English Heritage immediately afterwards.
Nice.
Pendennis Castle in Falmouth in Cornwall is one of my favourite places to do events. Great place. The only problem with most of the pirate stuff we do and other things too is it's always on the top of a cliff and it's always bloody windy, which is difficult if you're kind of like camping in, outside in authentic tents and stuff. Look, now I'm going to get all kind of, so hang on, let's do that like that. Right. So, oh, look, there's a button there that says share. I can click. Oh, I'm now requesting the host to allow multiple sharing for this meeting. What does that mean? All I want to do is, all I want to do is,
1 second. There you go.
cool.
Share screen. There you go. You should be able to share your screen now.
Oh, cool. Okay. Look at that. Oh, right. Okay. So from here.
Okay, let me just bring you on full screen. There we go.
Oh, this is exciting, isn't it? Okay, so from a screen point of view, here we go. This is the Old Royal Naval College. That's where I'm going to be next week. That is an amazing place. And yeah, I'm going to be camped on that bit of green on the right hand side. We're going to be doing firepower shows on the left hand side. So I'm hoping that's going to become my new favorite place to do events. We shall see. And they're very keen to do other bits and pieces too, which is kind of neat. And then let's just go back here. So yeah, those buildings I was talking about, building the stuff that I copied years ago. So just dive in there. So I'm on my Magrathea Builder World's Facebook page now. Magrathea Builder World started off as a Facebook thing. And it was lots of people in the old days. I started in 2018, and people in the old days asked me, was I going to do any videos? And I always said, no, I'm not going to do any videos. It's not my thing. And then it was during the pandemic. My wife said to me, you really ought to, you could do video things, do something on video. And it kind of grew out of that really. And the interesting thing about it was that I never really realized how important it was. It was super important to me and lots of other people as well. It was really cool. Hi, Jim. I have not said whimsy yet. We'll get on to that in a minute.
Yep, you just did.
Oh, shit. Steady now. So yeah, you can see that. Can you see that there? That's my
Disneyland
buildings. They're the actual buildings that I took photographs of in Disneyland, and that's my model of it. I think that's one of the only things that I've kind of like I've built from an actual thing.
All right.
Except let's just go and see if we can find. So my early builds, there are all kinds of step by steps. Now I don't tend to take step by step photographs. I just tend to make a video. Here we are. This is Kentwell Hall. That's Kentwell Hall, the real place. That's a really tiny picture. That's a crap picture of Kentwell Hall. But my model of Kentwell Hall looked like this. And it's what was cool about that was the fact that the first guy who walked past it, you can see there's nobody in the show there, so it's before the place opened. The first member of public who walked past it took one look at it and went, "That's Kentwell Hall in Suffolk," and I was so happy. It was ridiculous because it's like, yes, it is. You're absolutely right. And although, I mean, having said all that, I look at that and it's not right. I'd happily build it again. If there were time to build it again, I'd build it again. The proportions aren't right. It's too tall and not wide enough. But it's not bad considering I had no measurements at all and I was doing most of it with a couple of photographs. and my memory. So
I
you
mean,
know,
considering that people recognize it for what it was, it's I think that's more than good
yeah,
enough.
yeah. It was a very satisfying moment. That one actually, although it comes apart in multiple pieces, none of the inside is detailed. I'd love to find the time to detail that, but I have too many ideas. Um, a number of people who know me well reckon I've got ADHD. Completely self-diagnosed. My son has autism and ADHD. My wife has recently been diagnosed with autism, so I think I'm claiming the ADHD side of things. And for me, that kind of helps with a hyper focus point of view. And
Mhm.
I've got a lot more self-aware in the last few years about being really irritating and flitting from thing to thing. So I've got a lot better, and because of my video channel, I've got a lot better at completing a project. Well, not completing projects are never complete, but getting them to the point where they are mostly complete, where I can move on to something else as opposed to just jumping around all over the place.
So you kind
Um,
of find it that having to do not having wanted to do the video makes you stick to the project for okay until it's done, kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
And then I say something glibly months ago, like, I'm going to make Carnivale scenery, which I probably said in January. And then I went to Venice in April, which was just extraordinary. And here we are in July, and I haven't made any Carnivale scenery at all. I'm still making Judge Dredd, but you know, hey, I'm having fun. Now, how do we? Oh, look, I tried to get it to.
There's a
What do you mean?
stop sharing button somewhere, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I pressed that, and now my computer's just having a flid. So
Oh no! Don't.
it's got a little bit. Said Zoom meetings has stopped responding. Do you want to click here to stop? No,
Okay, give me a sec. Let's see if I can.
I'm
Uh,
doing a thing. I don't want to stop. But yeah, no, I mean, going back to that question about fantasy buildings and buildings from books, actually, or apart from Tolkien, I'm not a massive fantasy reader. Um, I'm Bernard Cornwell is my favorite author, and of course you know a big fan of Sharp and then Uhtred and various other things. So um, I'd happily make stuff. I'd happily make stuff for that too. But again, it's one of those things where I just now I'm all colour grayscale. That's weird.
yeah, I wonder what happened.
That's my PC just falling over because I've probably got too much video material and
Yeah,
there's not enough RAM to run things and that kind of thing. Because
doing magic and stuff.
yeah, well, I use it to edit. I'm editing a series of videos for work at the moment because that's the other thing now is the fact that I'm along with being a writing consultant and a pirate and a maker of and builder of worlds, I'm now a TV producer as well. So
Oh,
it's
really?
yeah. I mean, the thing that the big side of my business now is I have a second time capsule education
Hmm.
is what I do when I go into schools, and it is also the thing that I do my heritage work with. But we now have time capsule video as well, and time capsule video produces. We have a schools TV channel.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
when I was a kid, you watched TV in school kind of like rarely. The TV would be wheeled into the classroom on a trolley. Um, and actually, the TV in my school, the TV cabinet had doors. You know, you open the doors. And in the really early days, you just watched whatever was on the TV schedule. So it was 9:30 Thursday morning. So that was when we were going to watch Words and Pictures. Um, and later on, they got videos. So then you had a kid in the class who knew how to make the video work because the teacher didn't know how to make the video work. And then the BBC and Channel 4, who were the big producers of schools TV, stopped making TV and jumped forward 40 years or so. Now every classroom in the UK has got a TV this big, because it's their main teaching tool and there's nothing to watch. And although TV isn't the be all and end all of teaching, it's very useful.
Oops. I think we might have lost Tim. 1 second. Hold on while we figure this out. We'll be out for a short technical break. Be right back.
I got halfway through that spiel about my TV company and realised you've gone completely solid. There you go.
No, actually, we got to the. At least I heard a bit about the cabinet before you suddenly disappeared.
Yeah. Well, basically, yeah, nobody makes TV for schools anymore. So now we make TV for schools, and it's really cool because it's like a Netflix channel.
Oh,
It's
okay.
called TCTV. It can be found at tctv.education. And it's a primary TV channel, and I'm super proud of it. We actually added our 100th episode last Friday so we have 23 series on there at the moment for primary school kids from 4 to 11, and we just added our 100th episode of that. So I'm hoping to become a TV mogul and make my fortune out of TV, so I can have other people make TV for me, and I can sit in here and make carnivale models, or whatever.
Or, maybe you could get rich enough to buy your own pirate ship and then have a crafting room inside the pirate ship.
Now that's also a very good idea.
Of course,
I
it's a
like
good
that.
idea.
We could be broadcast live from the pirate ship. Yeah, actually, the problem with ships is the fact that from an event point of view, great for an immersive thing if people want to pay an enormous amount of money and come and be on board the boat. But from a spectator point of view, pretty rubbish, because you're kind of like, you can't get your audience really anywhere near the ship. So it's a difficult kind of thing. So when we're out doing piracy stuff and Golden Age piracy stuff, it is actually a lot better if I am in the grounds of a castle or something like that, because I can actually get near an audience.
That does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so I have this. Yeah, I have this problem. My biggest problem in my life is juggling all these things or spinning all these plates.
On the plus side, I don't think you ever get bored.
No, and I'm I don't get bored, and I'm a very busy guy. So from that point, although remarkably, considering I'm a very busy guy, I think the other bit of the ADHD bit of me is I'm very, very easy to distract too. So from that point of view, I can sometimes be very busy at doing very little. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I understand that.
I'm a classic doom scroller and watcher of mostly late night American TV on YouTube. Don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, uh, speaking of yesterday, I watched Excalibur for the first time.
For the first time.
For the first time, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Cool. And what did you think of Excalibur?
It's a good movie. I mean, it's showing its age, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's King Arthur is one of those things that yeah, it makes me die. It's that, well, from a historian point of view now, there's many questions about the fact that it came to the point where, yeah, he might have been a historical character, Romano, British warlord, and now there are quite a few people even suggesting he's not, although there are other people totally in love with the idea.
I mean, the plate armor is definitely wrong for the period, and the
all of that.
sexy times in plate armor is definitely not a thing.
Yeah, it's complete nonsense. But what a great movie!
Oh yeah,
it's yeah, absolutely terrible. But it is. I think I must have seen it. Well, I saw Excalibur a long time ago, and it's still. And for a lot of gamers in the UK and a lot of medieval historians in the medieval reenactors in the UK, it's one of those things that still has a really big impact on a lot of us. That and the TV series Robin of Sherwood.
that's another one I have to catch up with. But
Which, if you haven't seen Robin of Sherwood, you need to see Robin of Sherwood. It's there were three series in the early 80s. and absolutely brilliant. I mean, the storytelling, terrific. The historical accuracy, not so much. Um,
I mean,
but
it's
that's not
entertainment
what.
at the end of the day. Yeah. It's entertain.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the thing is, in the end, it's about Robin Hood, so it doesn't have to be necessarily historically accurate. A lot of the soldiers are wearing knitted mail armor. You know, it's not actually metal and that kind of thing. And but it is pretty cool. And there's so many people of my age who are into medieval history and medieval reenactment, where that was their go-to kind of inspiration for it. I love Robin Hood was the stories that I grew up. That was the thing that I loved. I think more than anything else when I was a kid.
I think the most jarring thing in that movie for me was Clive Swift. I believe I only knew him from Keeping Up Appearances. So seeing him bouncing upon a horse with plate armor, I was like,
Yeah, yeah, that's a bit weird. That's quality. Yeah, yeah, I forgot about it. Yeah, yeah, it's one of those things where sometimes you shouldn't go back and watch those movies because yeah, you sit there. And I used to love all the 80s fantasy films like Krull and
do you know did you the kind that came out after Conan the Barbarian and
yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah
and
yeah
there was
okay
Hawk the Slayer. That was just yeah, and they were cool and they were awful. And every now and then you kind of watch them back and you just watch them and they really haven't aged very well at all. And it's that kind of thing. Man. And it depends what you're watching them for. So Robin and Sherwood in some ways hasn't aged particularly well, um, but it was done on a shoestring budget. But the storytelling is absolutely brilliant. And it's the same with sci-fi series. One of my favorite sci-fi series from the late 70s after Star Wars came out was Blake Seven. Um, and if you haven't seen Blake Seven, you should check that out as well. Absolutely
okay
brilliant
I
story.
definitely will.
Brilliant storytelling. Hasn't necessarily aged particularly well. Some of the effects all the effects were done by the BBC's in-house effects team. And considering they probably had a budget of 20 quid per episode or so, they did amazing things. But it's really hard to kind of watch because it was made at the same time as Star Wars was. Um, and Star Wars, even then, their budgets were pretty low for what they were doing, but they were doing
Mhm.
amazing things in Star Wars. The BBC weren't quite able to match it. But again, great storytelling. They're the kind of things that I'd sit there and think, do you know what? I'd love there to be um, a reboot of these shows. But what they shouldn't do is mess with the stories. You know, I'd love them to take those stories and pick them up and put them down with today's production values, um,
Yeah.
and special effects, and they would be. I think the stories would still really stand up really well. But of course, that's not how reboots work, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I wish people would stop doing reboots and either pick up something that has not been done on a movie before. Like, for
I think
example,
it's very, I think it's very lazy,
yeah,
very lazy. Yeah, and the other day I was reading a thing from Simon Pegg, who was, where there's talk about doing a reboot of Shaun of the Dead,
can you
and
can
it's
you do Shaun of the Dead without Simon Pegg? I mean, like he's
exactly well, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, the whole thing, and he part of him was talking about the fact that so many of the jokes and bits of Shaun of the Dead um, are actually very personal to him and Edgar Wright, and to Nick Frost. That yeah, it will be a bit strange, but then there are other things where you get to the point where you get a story told or a reboot or something else where they're literally the only thing in it is the name of the thing and nothing else. It's like the I don't know if you're a Terry Pratchett fan at all.
yeah.
But the guards watch thing that they did.
The was it Amazon or Netflix? I forgot.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was, it was it Sky? Can't remember. I
Mm,
actually watched a bit of it, and if it hadn't actually had anything to do with Terry Pratchett, it might have been an all right series. But the fact that it was supposed to be Vimes and Carrot and all
yeah,
the rest of it,
yeah, I get you.
I,
It's like
it was just like, yeah, that's actually kind of disappointing. But so yeah, yeah, I wish they'd leave reboots alone. And there's so many other things out there that need to, stories to tell. But yeah, it takes a lot of imagination. I reckon it's probably really easy to sell to a TV company or a film company. Look, we got this thing that was done before. We could do it better.
It's already got an audience, low risk and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
but
Although, how often have the audience been happy with the reboot? That's the the previous audience. Yeah, usually not so much.
not very much. No.
Yeah.
Still, speaking as a historian, is there something that either you love seeing in movies, whether it's good or bad? It's like I don't know, either a trope or something that like, no, don't do that again.
Um, I, 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 I think I've got a lot better at watching TV historical drama.
Okay.
My wife would disagree. Um, I've got quite good recently at being able to watch things, and especially I work more in TV and I work more making things. So I know why some things are done now. Although I can't stop myself. So one of my absolute pet hates are back scabbards. Yeah, sword on your back. And in fact, there are friends of mine who know what TV program I'm watching or what's on the TV schedule, because I might be watching something, and if a back scabbard appears, I will just post in big capital letters on Facebook, back scabbard, because they're not a thing and they don't work and they're really impractical. The reason why characters like Uhtred in the Last Kingdom TV series has a back scabbard, or Geralt in The Witcher has a back scabbard, it's very hard to be heroic with a sword hanging on your hip. I've spent the last 15 years doing sword work, and it's difficult. Running up and downstairs, being dramatic, running through a marketplace with a sword in a scabbard on your hip.
Plap, plap, plap,
Your
plap,
legs
plap, plap,
just
plap, plap,
catch,
plap,
get
plap.
caught up in the
Yeah.
scabbard, and you fall over, or the scabbard flicks round and knocks the rest of it. If the scabbard's on your back and it's up and down, you can move around, and it's far less likely to cause any problems. But yeah, you never actually see a sword actually being drawn from a scabbard. So Uhtred's on the back of his horse, and he puts his hand here to pull his sword, and then you cut to his sword out here like this, because you just can't do it. Your arm's just not long enough. So yeah, I can't. I tend to nowadays be able to tell myself, hey, it's all right. It's just a drama. It's just calm down, because otherwise it just completely ruins kind of swashbuckling kind of stories. I mean, the Vikings and the Last Kingdom as TV series, I should absolutely love, and in many ways I do. But the clothes are bloody awful. The haircuts are ridiculous. The weapons often are terrible. The action, some of the fights scenes and battles, you're going, why is that? And I try to let that wash over me now. Um,
Yeah, I think I mostly do that as well, but with stuff like the Viking specifically, because that was History Channel, if I remember correctly. It was like,
yeah.
yeah, okay, I can cut you some slack. The leather armor looks horrible and stuff, but why in the poster, why is that guy wearing a marain, and why is that other guy wearing
Well,
threaded
yeah,
boots?
blimey. I mean, the Vikings is great. Yeah, they're in the 10th century or whatever, and there are guys walking around in 16th century burgonets, and you're like, what on earth? Yeah. And that's purely a directorial choice going, we need those guys to look different to those guys. In the first episode of The Last Kingdom, there's a fight between Saxons and Vikings, and the Saxons have got square shields, for God's sake. And it's purely because the directors of all these shows think that everybody who's watching it are idiots and they can't follow what's going on screen. It's like in all of those shows, the hero never wears a helmet.
Yeah, yeah,
And I mean, especially in Bernard Cornwell stuff, I don't know if you know the Last Kingdom series, but whenever he writes about Uhtred and he's going into battle or he's going off to war, he writes about Uhtred's helmet a lot. It's this thing, it's got a wolf's tail, and he describes it regularly. And it never gets worn. And that's because you're paying all this money for the gorgeous hunk to lead the army from the front. So you get to the point where you don't wear a helmet. Um,
So let's see. Evolution of gaming. Problem is, anyone who loves Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson knows they cannot make it better. The rebooter thinks they can, and no.
yeah, just leave Lord of the Rings alone. Just fucking don't mess with it at all, frankly. There is a film that hasn't aged. It's still just the absolute bee's knees. I'm even I even don't mind. I've listened recently in here doing stuff. I listened on Audible to Andy Serkis reading the whole of the
Mm-hmm.
Lord of the Rings. But it's that thing with you get to the point with it is a very good adaptation, and I'm even comfortable with some of the bits they left out. You know, it's like show London pattern anvils from the 1800s. Oh, there's a nerdy bit of information if ever I saw it. Yeah, you are completely right though. My wife is a Tudor blacksmith. Actually, when she's
Really? All right.
out and she's tutoring, there's nothing she's happier than doing than hitting lumps of metal. But even there,
Nice.
the anvils aren't the right shapes. Although they do a lot of stuff with stakes in logs and things, which is pretty good. But yeah, and she makes the metalware for she makes metalware for her costumes and all kinds of other stuff. So yeah, it's yeah. So I think the only film, not that I deliberately don't watch it. The only film I allow myself to get really shouty at is Elizabeth the Golden Age, with because Clive Owen as Sir Walter Raleigh, because that one's about him, possibly being the love interest for Elizabeth, which he wasn't, and it's about the main thing that revolves around the Spanish Armada, and it's all done for dramatic effect. But you get messengers come into the kind of like the Game of Thrones-esque room with the map where they're moving ships up the English Channel, because information moved that quickly in 1588, and you get these guys coming in going, "We've lost 2 ships," and I'm pulling my hair out going, "We didn't lose any ships." That was the whole point. The whole thing about it wasn't a great success. The English beating the Spanish in the Spanish Armada, and the following year the Spanish kicked the English's ass. But we didn't lose any ships at all. And then later on we lost 3 more ships, and then there's a dramatic bit where Sir Walter Raleigh, Clive Owen, leads the famous fire ship attack from the English ships at the Spanish fleet when they're off Calais. And he helms one of these ships into the French, and all the time I'm spitting and cursing because Sir Walter Raleigh was the commander of land forces in Devon during the Armada crisis. He wasn't even on a bloody ship. And then Elizabeth rides to speak to her army at Tilbury. Now, Tilbury is about 20 minutes away from me.
Okay.
There are no cliffs at Tilbury. It's a bit of a hole. I don't know if you know Essex at all. But Tilbury is the arse end of Essex. If you want to get shanked or beaten up on any day of the week, go to Tilbury, easy. And then it was just a marsh, right? And there's this great big army encamped there, and Elizabeth rides to speak to her army at Tilbury after the Armada has sailed on up the North Sea. I'd probably have to go and lose at the Battle of the Gravelines. And if anybody, from a history point of view, can quote anything that Elizabeth I was reported to have said, it's the speech about I may have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and soul of a. Wait a minute, still do
Stomach.
Blackadder. The heart and stomach of a concrete elephant. No, the heart and soul of a king, and a king of England at that. Right, that's what everybody, And then, and in this film, she rides out to speak to her troops in this amazing Gothic armor, which she wouldn't have been wearing. And then somebody thought that they could write a better speech than that, and you're like, so yeah, that's the one that gets me really, really cross. But otherwise, I just let it go now. I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy to watch Sharp and the Battle of Waterloo, where they've only got a cast of literally 10s. All of that is fine, because if it's good telling, it's good storytelling. I overlook it. On documentaries, on the other hand, when they do that wrong,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
absolutely makes my blood boil. So yeah, just never watch the History Channel ever, because it's mostly aliens and Hitler. Never watch any documentaries about pirates. They're all crap. Even the ones where I know guys who are on them, where it's just like, it's difficult. So I tend to stick to watching kind of like programs about murders on Netflix, because that's what my wife's into. It's easier that way. I can't have a row about that.
So let's see. So you mentioned Sharp and Lose the Collected mentioned. Have you seen Peachy's Silver Bayonet crossovers with Sharp? I have no idea what that is.
Well, Silver Bayonet, of course, is the Napoleonic era horror based game, right, about vampires and werewolves and that kind of thing. And I'm taking it. Peachy is another YouTuber, isn't he? I have to confess, I don't watch other gaming YouTubers, mainly because I haven't got time.
I think you've
And
got
then
enough to do.
I got enough to get. Every now and then I find one. I watch bits on. But my problem with other gaming YouTube, so I don't know, right, with my channel, how it is compared to other people's channels, right? I have people come and talk to me about my channels. I love it. I love going to wargaming shows. Last couple of years at Salute and a couple of other places where I've had people come up to me, and I've spent the entire day talking to people about Magrathea Builder Worlds and my channel, which I'm just so immensely humble about, because I did it for me. I did it for my own mental health, making videos about what I'm doing. And it's this fat hobby Gandalf being a bit whimsical. There you go, Jim, if you're still watching, this one for you.
Yeah, he's still there.
In my shed, doing what I do. And I rattle away to people. The other YouTube stuff I've seen, there's some great, really, really top-notch people out there making stuff better than me. Whoop the Tilby massive. Yeah, well, you'll know how much of a hole Tilby is then, won't you, James? Yeah, yeah, they're amazing, some amazing content producers and hobbyists out there. But I think the thing that I like about my videos, and in fact they've gone. I tried to make short videos when I started off. I tried to make snappy kind of short videos, and I can't help it. I just end up making these great big long rambling things, because to me the narrative and the process is the important part of what we're doing. There are lots of guys out there who make really slick videos, and they produce really cool stuff. But my thing, it's the teacher in me, I think. I want people to get into the hobby and think, yeah, I could do that. Oh wow, look at that. That's not as complicated as I thought it could be. Oh, that's a really cool idea. Or this stuff has come, oh, that's where you go and get that thing from, or this is how you use that material. And I want people to get to the end of one of my videos and think, I could have a crack at doing that.
I mean, I'll be honest, I
And
think that's one of the things I appreciate in your videos, and other people like Jack Cleveland, for example, who take a very long time to, not a very long time, but it's a nice, slowly paced video. And it's not like, okay, I have to watch this in 5 minutes, boom, 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 boom. No, okay, I'm going to
yeah,
set aside some time, I'm going to watch this video, I'm going to enjoy that. And it really helps mentally, I think.
I know there are guys who watch me when it's the whole concept to me is still really kind of weird. I'm doing my hobby and I video it and put it out there, and there are other people then who are doing their hobby while watching to me. But I've had people say to me, it's like having a mate sat in the room when they're doing their hobby, and which I find, again, it's a really lovely thing to hear, because it's that I'm just about helping other people into the hobby and making it kind of affordable. I've been a little lucky recently. Warlord Games has sponsored some of my Judge Dredd content, which has been cool. And basically all they did was they sent me a bunch of toys. Thanks, Warlord. And keep sending me that stuff. And there'll be a couple other things like that. But I've watched some videos. I can't remember who the builder was. There was a guy I watched a video a year or so ago of this guy built this amazing 3D sculpted Shire table, right? It
I
must have been
Real terrain hobbies, maybe, I
6 foot.
think.
I can't remember. 6 foot by 6 foot at least. He was sponsored by Woodland Scenics.
Yeah, okay, that's real terrain hobbies. Yeah. He did make a fantastic job out of it, but that thing must have costed quite a lot. Okay. Oh dear, the machine god seems to have to be angry again. Okay, Do we still have connection? Yeah, exactly. Evolution of gaming. That table was a masterclass in how to use the products, but if you put that together, it would be very expensive. It's okay. We'll be back in a second until. Let me just remove this. Yeah, I think he lost connection, so he'll be back in a second.
Right, sorry about that.
Hey, no worries.
I don't know what happened there. Yeah, but yeah, no, this is an extraordinary build. I wouldn't have seen it sponsored this build, and he got a pallet load of stuff, right? All the lighting, 6 squillion trees, and you're sitting there going, and you look at that and go, yeah, you know what? And don't get me wrong, I would have loved to have that table. I would have loved to have had a 6 foot by 6 foot Shire table. Who wouldn't? It was quite an extraordinary model. But there was a bit of me also going, well, you know, if you get 1,500 quid's worth of resources in the first place, you're going to do something pretty cool with it, aren't you? Really, you know, it's
I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure I could find a way to mess it up. So if anyone wants to send me 15,000 quid of equipment,
yeah,
challenge
yeah,
accepted.
fair play, fair play. But yeah, you know, I mean, the thing is, in the end, is I like the simple solution. So when I started doing my Necromunda stuff, and I was finding 3D printed little kind of like shapes
Hmm.
and coin battery holders that you could just slip
Oh,
LEDs
okay.
into, plug in, and you could light up your terrain. And I've done that with a lot of my Burrows and Badger stuff. They've just got simple button battery holders stuck in the roof. You just slip an LED into, and you light up. So there you go. That's a perfect example. That top left, well, that's the docks. Surgery there, all lit up with green lights. That is just coin battery holders with LEDs in them. And then a friend of mine, Reese, who's Minis Monsters and Mayhem, designed some LED holders for Necromunda style stuff. But still, it just held a battery and you stuck your LED in it. It's really cool. You don't need to do super complex kind of lighting systems or the rest of it. And yeah, that's do you know what? Look at that. I haven't had all that like out for ages. There's way more of that now. That could be. That's pretty cool, isn't it? I like that.
It is very cool.
I like that. There's a lot more stump stuff now. There's the Necromunda stump stuff really got me a lot of people watching. And I really need to go back and make some more Necromunda stuff because you know, I feel that a lot of people started watching my channel and then I haven't made anything that they were into since I started watching. I feel bad, but
Okay, so Evolution of Gaming is
yeah,
saying.
I have, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. GW sent a pallet of scenery kits. Well, shit, I could make Minotaurus if GW sent me all the, you know, if GW wanted to send me a pallet of Osgiliath things, I could do Osgiliath easy. You know,
Yeah,
it's
then again, I think the thing I was most jealous about wasn't that build because it is a truly magnificent build. It is a massive build, beautifully done. But I think the thing I was most jealous about was the space.
yeah. I mean, yeah, this is it. Normal people don't have that kind of space. I've got a lot of space to store stuff. Apart from anything else, I have 2 containers full of stuff for work, right? So models, costumes, and sci-fi things, and I store stuff for all the pirate shows we do and all kinds of stuff. So I'm not short of storage space, but I'm short of storage space. And actually having a realistic place where you can get that out, play on it, and then put it away again is really difficult. So I think a lot of my kind of mission for doing what I do is I hope that people watch my channel and actually get to the end of it and go, yeah, okay, well, I'm not going to do it like that, but I've got a good idea how I could do it now, and I know where I can get the materials from, and I know it doesn't have to be as complicated as that. And I hope that the community that and certainly from the people who I speak to, who come and speak to me, take the time out of their day at a show like Salute to come and talk to me. I think that they appreciate that, and they get to the point where they think that that's helped with their hobby in a way that some of these other things. I want to inspire. I don't want to have people aspire to what I do. I think
That's
there are
a
people
lovely way
out
of
there.
putting it.